Good morning, everyone. Welcome. It's FBC Radio Live. It is the first day of summer, John. I know you can feel it up there in the Northeast. I'm sure it's a balmy, 70 degrees, overcast, something like that. It's actually raining down here. I woke up to quite the thunder and lightning show outside my house this morning, and I'm not going to lie, I very much enjoyed it. I like these nice little morning thunderstorms. It kind of sets up for a very hot and humid day, though. That's the one problem. So, John, does it feel like summer where you are right now?
Not really. I mean, it's in the 60s, might reach a high of 70, fairly sunny, but, feels more like a spring day than a summer day, but not too bad. We didn't get any thunder or lightning. If that were the case here, I'd be hiding under my bed. I'm frightened of that stuff.
See, I love it. I love it. I love the sound the rain makes on the roof. I love the rumble, all that stuff. I very much enjoy that. So, no, it's obviously, it's longest day of the year for us here. At least on the East Coast. I don't know. Actually, you know what? To be honest with you, I don't know exactly how that works, because I know Alaska obviously has a day where there's 24 hours of daylight. But for us, you and me, I'm not going to speak to anyone outside of the, I guess, East Coast. This is definitely the longest day of the year for us, obviously, with the sun, with summer coming upon us, the summer solstice, John. That's all I know. I don't really know anything other than that, so I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I do.
It's a long day. We get 17 or 18 hours of sunlight today, right? It gets light out like at 4:45, and it stays that way till like 8:45. So yeah, it is a long day. It's all downhill from here, though. The days get shorter.
Yeah, it's only downhill from here. I like that mentality. Immediately to the negative. No, but we're gonna get to, obviously, the NBA draft is tomorrow night, and there's not much mystery as to who's going to be going number one. I don't want, this isn't sports related, but everyone by now has probably heard of the submarine story that's ongoing right now. I'm fascinated in the most uncomfortable way, and by that there's so many questions as to first of all, I don't think I'd ever put myself in that exact same type of contraption above water, let alone 2.5 miles below the surface. And I'm talking about the submarine group that is currently still missing, as they went to go explore the Titanic wreckage. And look, I mean, the idea, I'm not going to sit there. I know some people are sitting there saying oh, they're billing. Oh, this is what you get for wasting your money. Look, if you have the means to do it, John, by all means, go for it. I think if you had an opportunity to be one of the very few people to, with their own eyes, see that wreckage, you know what? By all means, knock yourself out. I'm not going to sit there and knock you for that. I'm just wondering about the choice of vessel and just putting yourself in that position where John, this this ship apparently cannot be opened by anyone other than someone from the outside. So you're basically sealing yourself off in this, what amounts to be an extra large casket. Well, that's a bad pun, but the size of it, I'm saying, is it's not that much. It's not a big thing. I mean, there's 5 people probably sleeping head to toe. I don't know, John. I personally wouldn't do it even if I had the money. I'd much rather spend my time above the surface of the water. But that's just, I mean, I don't know. I can't even imagine. This is where your mind starts racing. You start wondering everything that's going on, not only in their minds, but just in the minds of the people controlling this. As far as what we've learned, this seems like this was an accident waiting to happen.
Yeah, they're 2.5 miles below the Earth's surface, right? So there's an incredible amount of pressure down there. There's only so many submarines in the world that could get down there and tow this vehicle or this, whatever it's called, it feels almost like a minivan that they made somewhat waterproof. But
Yeah.
again, you couldn't open it from the inside because if you tried to do that, I'm sure the pressure would just kill people instantly. But you have to open it from the outside. But who's going to get down there with that pressure to go down there and open it? It just seems like an impossible situation. I guess the only way they can try to do this is they know it's near the Titanic. They know where the Titanic is, so they go down 2.5 miles, however, and try to, pull the thing up. I mean, it's going to be like a last-ditch effort for these 5 people that are in this thing.
So someone tweeted this yesterday, and it kind of puts this all in such a just a bad look. It's look, the Titanic sank in what, 1912 was it?
Mhm.
People were looking for that ship, and it wasn't found until 1985, and they knew where to
That's
look.
crazy.
They knew the air. You know what I'm saying? And then now you think of something in such a smaller scale. It's just I don't know. Like I say, it's with today's news coverage and how things are transmitted instantly. I mean, people are now obviously living this, hour by hour, wondering, is there going to be some sort of miracle happening, finding this vessel? Because by all accounts, it seems like you're trying to look for a needle in a. I don't even think needle in a haystack does it justice. I think it's like it's worse, So
Yeah, three quarters of the Earth's surface is covered by water, and now we're talking 2.5 miles down, and if you're off 1 degree, now you're in a completely different area. So
yeah,
it does seem nearly impossible, and the oxygen is going to run out in the next 24 hours.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's just a wild story. Obviously, we hope that it obviously resolves in a positive manner. But it's just I'm not, I understand, John, that there are people out there that are thrill seekers. I'm
Mhm.
not one. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I'm like, some bland person, but I'm there's a line, for me personally. And things like skydiving, going under the water, 2.5 miles, that type of thing. That is very far on one side of the line that I'm just not going to touch. And like, I don't know. I just would you like forget about paying $250,000, John, to do that? Would you do that for $250,000?
No, I wouldn't. I'm not adventurous at all. I just basically, going on the red line in Boston is adventurous enough
Yeah.
for me. I'm kind of like Woody Allen or George Costanza, so I'm not an adventurous person at all.
Yeah, well, like, look, I mean, trust me, I wouldn't do it for $250,000. Now, I sit here and I'll say, well, I wouldn't do it for X amount of money, but who knows? Maybe there's a limit for me on that. But I feel like it would be quite a while. You know, that to me, my like biggest, like, I guess, phobia is like, I guess I'm not claustrophobic necessarily. In some situations I am, but if I were like trapped in like a box, so to speak, that would frighten me. So putting
Yeah.
myself in a situation that would create that type of anxiety is bad enough as it is. So I don't I don't know if there would be enough money that I would take to do that. But then again, this has apparently they've been running these like little tours for a while. So, it's like I said, I mean, I don't know enough about the engineering and how that all works, but based on some of the reporting, it seems like this was just kind of unfortunately a situation that was just bound to happen eventually, and hopefully it gets resolved. But anyways, let's we'll shift back to sports, because tomorrow, John, is the NBA draft. Now, like I said, there's no mystery as to who is going first overall. But I'm going to give you the floor, so to speak, to tell us what's going to happen picks 2 and 3, because, well, I mean, like, look, the NBA draft is exciting, but certainly not to the level that the NFL draft is. I don't think anything really comes close to the NFL draft, but there's some excitement. It's just not the spectacle that it is outside of like the first few picks. So picks 2 and 3, what are you doing?
Well, the thing about the NBA draft is these are players you really never got a chance to see unless you want to go on YouTube to see Victor Wembanyama. You don't know much about him other than he's the best prospect since LeBron James. Scoot Henderson is probably the second best prospect, but is Charlotte going to take him? They already have a pretty accomplished point guard in LaMelo Ball. Portland has the third pick, probably Brandon Miller. Scoot Henderson is gone. But what is Portland going to do? Are they going to trade that pick to get an established veteran to go along with Dame Lillard and try to rebuild from there? So those are all questions that will get answered tomorrow night with picks 2 and 3. And then after that, there's a lot of question marks. At least in the NFL, you see these players, right? When we saw the 5 quarterbacks drafted in the first round a couple of years ago, well, Trey Lance we didn't see all that much of because, he only played one game that year because of COVID. But we saw Trevor Lawrence for 3 years at Clemson. We saw Zach Wilson for a year at BYU. We saw Mac Jones win a national championship at Alabama. We saw what Justin Fields could do when he was at Ohio State. So you knew about these players. With the NBA draft, there's just a lot of question marks because there's a lot of one and done. There's also other players that will play overseas and then come in after 1 year being a pro. It's not like years ago where, okay, Olajuwon was the first pick. We knew how great he was going to be. Sam Bowie was the surprise second pick, and then Michael Jordan went third. We saw all these guys' college career for 2, 3, sometimes even 4 years when you're talking about Tim Duncan. That is not the case right now with the NBA draft.
No, so there's no, I mean, it's again, you really have to be a hardcore college basketball fan to really kind of, understand, and really get into these players. Because again, even if you pay attention pretty intently for one season, how much can you really glean? You know what I mean? There's so much information. So yeah, I'm with you. And like I said, I mean, that's not me. I just don't watch college basketball to that extent. So, outside of the hype, which in a way it's manufactured, and I'm not saying that in a negative way, but it's really kind of dependent on how the media covers it for most basketball fans. Because, well, again, like you said, John, I mean, who's watching European basketball? like I understand, there's hardcore basketball fans out there, but look, I love hockey and I watch some, junior and international hockey stuff, but certainly not to the level that you would need to evaluate, say, a player, a player to the point where you can sit there and say, yeah, I know he's going to do this or he's going to do that. So, yeah, I'll be fascinated to see how it plays out. This is also, outside of those maybe handful of players, unlike the NFL, where you can draft players in later rounds. There's a lot of players that can make an immediate impact. Now, again, this is partly because the size of the draft is also much larger than the NBA. So there's maybe the perception is that there's more, hit rates in the NFL. Would that make sense? I feel like in hockey's a bit of a crapshoot because there's a lot of long development among players. And I'm not saying it's the same exact way for basketball, but I feel like it's a little bit more similar to hockey than it is in the NFL. Does that make sense?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, just the size of an NFL roster is 5 times the size of an NBA roster. And then when you look at an NBA roster, players 10, 11, and 12 are just kind of there on the bench as developmental players or guys that fill in. Where in football, you do need contributions from most of your roster, right, in terms of depth. And because of injuries, you need those players. Yeah, I mean, look, the greatest player in the history of football was drafted with pick 199. You don't generally see that in the NBA. First of all, it's only 2 rounds. Nikola Jokic is the only MVP in the history of the league that was not drafted in the first round. He won 2 MVPs and now is widely considered the best player in the sport. But 99 and 44 100th of the top players in the history of the game, all first-round picks, and the majority of those top 3 picks. That's just the way it works in basketball. Sometimes, though, you can find great players in the second round. Dennis Rodman, Draymond Green were both second-round picks, but they were kind of role players. Jokic, obviously, is the greatest second-round pick ever. But it is different than football because you find guys in the 5th, 6th, 7th round.
Yeah, and look, I mean, that's partly why. I mean, the NFL obviously is just a machine when it comes to marketing and promoting their product. I mean, it's easy when you have look, it's easy to market pizza if you have great pizza, because who the hell doesn't like pizza, John? But, give credit where credit's due. The NFL knows the dollar rules everything, all right? it's like that old Simpsons thing where Homer's doing the Mad Magazine thing, the almighty dollar, but it's really the almighty dollar. That's what it is. The NFL knows how the dollar works. So in that case, yes, they maximize their product to no end. But that's also part of the reason why the NFL draft is so popular, is that it isn't just about the first round. I mean, it is about the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and like anything after that. So, like again, it's like I said, I mean, it's fun, and you can only do so much in basketball. I mean, it's really about the stars that are in the league now, anyways. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But NFL, still no DeAndre Hopkins news. He seems to be he hasn't had another visit since New England. So right now it seems to be New England and Tennessee are the two teams that he has visited, which, look, I mean, if I was DeAndre Hopkins, I would probably think that New England's a better option. Yeah. Right?
Well, they have more money to offer. Now, again, Tennessee can kind of work the books if they need to match that offer. But, yeah, I would think that.
Well, I mean, in terms of team-wise, I know we haven't been able to really say this quite often the last couple of years with the Patriots, but I actually like where the Patriots are far more than where Tennessee is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I would think they have more depth at wide receiver and tight end than Tennessee does. Pick Mac Jones or Ryan Tannehill. Depends if Tannehill plays the entire season with Tennessee. They've got some young quarterbacks they may want to see. I know he does have a relationship with Mike Vrabel when Vrabel was the linebacker coach in Houston. I think they struck up a nice relationship, so there may be that as a factor. But it's going to come down to which side offers him more money, because that appears to be what he's all about, which is fine. But he should be. It's a short career in the NFL. Make as much as you can. If Buffalo or Kansas City could ever step up and match those offers, I would assume he'd go to one of those two places, because they do have legitimate chances to win the Super Bowl. But yeah, I would say the Patriots probably offer a little bit more than Tennessee, money and a deeper receiver room, so that he could probably help the Patriots receivers and they could help him as well.
Yeah, and look, we talked about it a little bit the other day. I mean, this Patriots season is obviously, there's a lot of pressure on Mac Jones, obviously. You want to have him take more of a progressive arc in his season like he had in year one, as opposed to year two, where there were a lot of bumps along the way. You help him by doing that, by bringing in a guy like DeAndre Hopkins. However, even if you bring in DeAndre Hopkins, it's still about Mac Jones, because this team, they have good players on this team. They have a good defense. I mean, who knows what's going to happen with the whole Jack Jones thing? We haven't even talked about that, but I would assume, John, he's probably not going to be available to start the season. But at this point, they're pretty solid on defense. They have a pretty decent group of offensive players. You add DeAndre Hopkins to the mix, all of a sudden you go from pretty decent to a really good group of players, at least on paper. And, again, Mac Jones plays a better brand of football than he did last year. And I think just alone having a not specifically Bill O'Brien, I'm not sitting here pretending like he's some like wizard that's going to come in and just fix whatever he touches, but just a better situation in general based on what he had last year. I mean, hell, Nathaniel Hackett could have come in and it would have probably been a better offensive situation for Mac Jones because of the focus on what they do. So, yeah, so I'd be excited to see him suit up for the Patriots. And I do think he could have a bigger impact, not just on the team, but just on the development of Mac Jones, because again, we've talked about Stephon Diggs' arrival and Josh Allen's third year and how that really helped him kind of piece together some of the missing pieces to his game and really make him be a little bit more consistent. So, but outside of those two teams, and say outside of Buffalo and Kansas City, is there a team you would want him to see? Not necessarily realistic, but like, who do you want to see him play with the most? And something tells me you're gonna say the New York Jets and Aaron Rodgers, right?
Well, that would be interesting. Although I think the Jets receiver room is pretty good right now, and I'm just waiting any day now for Mercedes Lewis, who's older than I am,
yeah,
to join the Jets as yet another tight end. but I don't think he's going to go to the Jets, whether it be for money or the fact that the Jets, I think, are pretty solid there. I keep thinking about Cleveland because they could use some help on offense. They've got a good roster. They'll contend for a playoff spot with a bunch of other teams. And obviously, we know his best years were with Deshaun Watson, who you expect to play better this year than he did last year after missing the entire season the year before. So I know that was rumored out there, but nothing really came of that. So that could be kind of a surprise team that could jump in. And anytime you see these things, Ian, there's always one team that's kind of laying in the weeds.
Yeah.
That just says, well, we've got plenty of cap room. Maybe a wide receiver got injured early in camp. Let's make a move for DeAndre Hopkins, who, has a month now before camp starts, so he can take his time and decide where he wants to go. But I think Cleveland could be kind of a outside the box spot. It's really not that outside the box since there's that connection with Deshaun Watson, and they do have money.
I keep saying Jacksonville. Just go to Jacksonville. Go play with Trevor Lawrence and Calvin Ridley coming back from suspension. By the way, if we thought Calvin Ridley's suspension was a big deal, the issues, and these are issues created by the leagues themselves because they were they just kind of dove into gambling because they saw that they could finally make money off of it without really considering the consequences. Now, this could be an issue of them just having a poor set of rules for the players. I'm not necessarily saying this is all a player's issue. We know how the NFL is. They're not necessarily great at logic and clarity. So perhaps the perhaps the rules aren't so clear, but the reality of it is, John, I think these players are trying to get away with things that, maybe they're trying to, think that they can fool the NFL, because there are going to be a lot of disciplinary things coming down the pipeline when it comes to these gambling issues. It's one of the things that, like, I look at it and say, like, if it's not the NFL, John, I don't care if they're sitting there in their locker room betting money on baseball, basketball, hockey. You know what I mean? I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously, you get into football and you're betting on your own sport. Now that I understand, you need to have some sort of structure there. You know what I mean? You can't just have it be fast and loose, but very clearly the number of players that are suspected of having these gambling issues with the league, it feels like these rules aren't either clear enough or they're a little bit too gray because, well, we know how the NFL deals with issuing rules. Well, they make it so they can basically interpret it however the hell they want.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is you can't gamble while you're on the team site, like in the locker room or in the offices. But if you leave the facility, then you can wager on some of these other sports. Yeah, it's very, very confusing. And I know that the league is sending representatives to talk about this to the young players so that, as they're rookies, they kind of learn about this. But it is almost laughable that the league is now in bed with gambling. And then obviously they have to put a stranglehold on the players. I mean, are there rules for the owners as well? That the owners can't gamble. I mean, look, I know they're all billionaires, but it is something that people find thrilling, if that's the best word to use. So, you got to watch out for the owners as well. I mean, ask Clark Judge about Leonard Tost, who was the owner of the Philadelphia Eagles in the 70s and into the early 80s. He's a guy who lost his franchise because of gambling debts in Atlantic City. I think he owed every casino in Atlantic City a huge amount of money. So, if we're going to police all of the players, but what are the owners doing exactly?
Yeah, exactly. And then, and that's the thing, like it's a very slippery slope. And this is, like I said, partly because, look, the only reason gambling wasn't embraced before and the NFL pretended to take a hard stance was because they weren't making any money off of it, because it wasn't legal. Mm-hmm. That's the only reason. It has nothing to do with it. I mean, sure, there are concerns about the the Tim Donaghy stuff in the NBA and really the distrust a lot of people have, and especially NBA officiating. In which case, I think there's you can have far more of an influence as an NBA official, just based on the game, the smaller group of players involved and everything like that. So I think there is distrust there, but let's not pretend like the NFL was holding back because of, they're worried about the integrity of the game. They were just like, oh yeah, integrity, right. Can we make money?
Mhm.
That's what it was. Can we? No, we can't. Okay, no, we can't. Okay, gambling's bad. Yes, we can. Okay, gambling's great. Come on in. Like I always bring this up, because I wrote this like years ago, but like Tony Romo he was doing some fantasy football convention or whatever in the off season, and the convention was being held at a casino property, and the NFL said you can't do this because it promotes gambling, and it had nothing to do. It was just an outrageous, like hypocritical, complete 180 stance from what we see now, where it's like, well, you can't get through an NFL story without mentioning the odds or having the ticker underneath give some sort of a prop number or something like that. So, yeah, it's going to take a while, I think, for the NFL and all these leagues to kind of figure this all out. But mostly the NFL, because I praised them earlier about being able to kind of promote their product, but they still can't get out of their own way in a lot of different ways.
Oh yeah, I mean they too big to fail is the best way
Yeah.
to describe
Oh yeah.
the NFL. In the movie Concussion, one of the folks involved said they literally own a day of the week. Well, it's even more than that now.
Yeah.
It's Monday night, it's Thursday night, it's Sunday, and it's every other day in between because that's all people talk about. And you just look at what 30, 40, 50 million people in this country play fantasy football.
Yep.
There's your audience. You
Mhm.
get 30, 40, 50 million people every week sitting around their TV with friends, other couples, and they're all playing fantasy football. And when you do that, you're invested into the product. It's a huge reason
Yeah.
why the NFL is so popular is gambling.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, like you wouldn't have the type of interest in any of these sports leagues if you didn't have some sort of fantasy aspect, because it brings in not just casual fans, but it reinvigorates hardcore fans. You get a little bit more into it. And maybe you're not a fantasy football player, but there's other ways to consume the product now that it's it reaches just such a broad fan base, and like you said, it becomes too big to fail. So kind of like us, John, kind of like us. Or maybe we're too little to succeed. I don't know. One of the two. Too big to fail or too little to succeed. Maybe a mix in between. Who knows? But we are going to say goodbye for today, and we will be back tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow, right? That's kind of a question and a statement at the same time. But yes, tomorrow we will be back. We'll be talking more NFL and obviously more NBA draft. So have a great day, everyone, and we will talk to you then.